All right, so for this video, I actually want to go over a little bit of the vocabulary terms that are associated with genetics. We talked about gene being a section of DNA that codes for a protein. And then allele is different types or different forms of that gene, either dominant being the stronger one or recessive being the weaker one. And let's see. So we have dominant is stronger, and then recessive is weaker. And I don't want you to think that like dominant is better because it's stronger. It's just the one that shows up. And if there's a dominant and a recessive allele together, the dominant one is going to show up. In order for the recessive one to show up, you have to have two copies of that allele. So this is so allele are forms of a gene, either dominant or recessive. And we show these by writing either a capital letter for the dominant, so like a capital letter A, and then a little letter A for recessive, and that's how we show them. Note that I used the same letter. I didn't use an A and a B. I used two A's, one capitalized, one lowercase, and that shows that these are alleles that are linked together. It's very important that you always keep that consistent when doing this or when doing genetics problems, because if you start using extra letters, you're just going to confuse yourself. Let's see if this is gonna let me erase faster. I probably should have just made another one. Still using this, learning how to use this whiteboard on my laptop. Anyways, so let's pop back over here. So we talk about in terms of genotype, and we can talk about phenotype. And genotype is the genetics, the genes. And we talk about genotype, we're going to write these as those letters. So this would be our big A, little a, our two big B's, two little H's. And if you notice, I use letters that look very distinct, capital and lowercase. You want to do that to avoid confusing yourself so that you can, make sure that you know the difference between the dominant and a recessive allele, because it's important. It's important to understand which one's dominant, which one's recessive. Let's say like the letter C doesn't look very different, capital and lowercase. You have to make a very big effort to make it bigger and smaller, and sometimes it just doesn't play out right. So I always encourage students for this to use distinct letters: A's, B's, D's, F, H. The letter T is good. The letter R is great. Ones that look very distinct, different, capital and lowercase. Phenotype are going to be our physical traits or physical characteristics. So like when you say someone has like green eyes, or they are tall or short, this could be your skin color, your blood type, your hair color. Any way you would physically describe how that gene is expressed. This is your blood type. So we're really describing it with phenotype. And this is going to become important because we're going to talk about when we get into Punnett squares, making the connection between the two. And then the last little bit of vocabulary that I want to do, let's see. Erase this. I want to get into the different types, and I kind of already wrote them when I wrote them a minute ago when I did the A's, the B's, and the H. So when I did big A, little a, I have a dominant and I have a recessive allele. So this is my dominant, this is my recessive. Capital is dominant, lowercase is recessive. And we're going to refer to this as heterozygous. So this is heterozygous. And this means different or mixed, as it's explained in your textbook. And what's different is one's capital and one's lowercase. It's not that they're two different letters. I said this before, I'm going to say it again. You have to make sure you're using the same letter. It shows that these two alleles are for the same gene. So let's say we were talking about like the pea flower, purple versus white. The color of the flower is a trait that's linked. It's either purple or it's white. Purple being dominant. So for this particular one, because it has one dominant allele, that means it would be purple. This flower would be purple. And this is the genotype. This is the genes. Whereas if we had, let's say, two big A's, now we have two of the same alleles. So this is going to be homozygous. This means same. But specifically, because they're both dominant, it's homozygous dominant. And you have to put the dominant on this because if I just say homozygous, well, they're the same one. Are they both recessive or are they both dominant? And again, this one, as long as there's one dominant allele, it's going to have that dominant phenotype. So if we're going back to the pea flower color, this one's phenotype would be purple. And then our last type of genotype we're going to discuss is homozygous recessive. So this is homo, again, meaning same. Zygous, that's an O. That's a U. Recessive. I'm going to fix that just because it doesn't look right to me. O-U-S. Same thing for this one up here, because y'all know my handwriting sometimes is a little crazy. G-O-U-S. And this one, because there are two recessive alleles, it's going to have the recessive phenotype because there's not a dominant allele to take over or to overshadow it. So in the case of our pea flowers, this flower would be white because that is our recessive phenotype. And again, as long as there's one dominant, it's going to be that dominant color. So that heterozygous, it's not going to be purple and white. It's just going to be purple because the purple is the stronger one. It's the one that's going to be actually produced. The pigments are going to be produced to cause that purple flower. So this was a little bit of a crash course, if you will, my own version of it in genetics vocabulary, and I hope that this helped.